Welcome into the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. Boy, do we have a story for you today, folks. It is a story that, you know what, I always am intrigued by true crime stories that happened. I hate to say in my childhood, but you know what, I'm that old now. 70s and 80s crime to me is fascinating because to me, you know, I'm the Steve McQueen, Clint Eastwood type. Where I like to look at stuff in that era. And we have a story today that's, well, let's face it, it's in that era. CHASSON'S RUN is the name of the book. Daniel Zimmerman is our author today. And we're going to take a look at a story where the men were men and the sheep were scared. I guess we could put it that way, maybe. But it's a great book. And I want to bring him on today and talk about Leroy Chasson and a story where, let's face it, this guy was a little tough, a little crazy, a little brave, but maybe we shouldn't hold him in a hero's light because there was no hero to this guy. He was just plain a criminal. We'll put it that way. That's what we're here for. We're here to talk about a criminal.
Yes, he was.
So let's bring in Dan now. Dan Zimmerman is the author of the action-packed Shots in the Dark, has added a highly anticipated second book to his true crime resume. And CHASSON'S RUN, the book we're talking about today, Dan chronicles the notorious escape of convicted killer Leroy James Chasson from Massachusetts Walpole State Prison. Armed with equal parts ingenuity, guile, and a .45 automatic. We'll tell you a little bit about Leroy Chasson here. He took flight from a hospital ER with his accomplice wife at his side. We're going to hold that story for a little bit here and get into it.
Sure.
As a former emergency medical technician working for the ambulance firm tasked with treating and transporting prison inmates, Dan had direct access to a number of firsthand eyewitness accounts of the escape. When he's not working arena ice rinks and sidelines writing sports for local newspapers, Dan enjoys travel and spending time with his two grandchildren. He lives on the North Shore of Boston with his wife of 40 years. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome in for the first time to True Crime Tuesday, Dan Zimmerman. Dan, welcome in.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate the opportunity to share this story. Been looking forward to having this book released. Much the same as my first book, Shots in the Dark. That was a 7-year project, and this was 5, although delayed a little bit by the COVID situation. I lost about a year and a half, 2 years of writing, putting this one together. But it's out and seems to be doing well, and I'm getting feedback already. It's only been a couple of weeks, and it's mostly positive feedback. They like the way I told the story, and it's a 40-year-old story, so I had to bring forth a lot of old timers like myself.
Yeah.
To view and get the story out.
It is an excellent story, Dan. I'll tip my cap to you. It's not just well researched, but I'll put it to you this way: you really do bring the feeling of the area, the people who were involved. You're right there with Leroy Chasson and the people involved, everyone involved. And you're right there. I mean, you feel the incident as it's happening all the way through.
Well, you know, oddly enough, it's been asked of this book because the first book I had a personal tie to it. Shots in the Dark involved family members. And I also had immediate access to the alleged perpetrator, Rocco Bolero, who was incarcerated when I first started writing. And I managed to arrange for twice weekly visits with him for about 2 years. It was a pretty long, intense process. And this book, too, has similar personal ties because, as you read my bio, I was an EMT and I was transporting these inmates on a regular basis from the prison to the hospital for assorted injuries and illnesses. So I have I've had one of those lives where I've been kind of gifted good stories to tell. And then I added my writing to make that happen. So
let me ask you this before we get into the story, because you've been transporting these inmates back and forth. Leroy Chasson was one of those inmates that was a little harder to deal with. Do you find that most of them are not that way, that they tend to be more congenial?
No, it's a 50-50. It's oddly enough, sometimes in the ambulance you would have inmates who, and you're sitting there on the way to the hospital, thanking the dear Lord that they're chained up, because you
Really?
just wouldn't want these guys. Oh yeah, yeah. Then there are others you kind of you hear their stories, and trust me, these gentlemen love to tell the stories. Some of them kind of make you lose sleep at night after you think about it. So it's a 50-50. Some of the inmates I'd rather not talk to. Uh, Honestly, though, they want to talk. They don't get out very often. They don't see people other than co-inmates. So when they're in the back of the ambulance, if they're physically able, they do want to talk. They do want to tell their stories. And I've heard some over the years.
Now,
Yeah,
one of the
very.
things you mentioned in the book is that some of these inmates will fake a stabbing or they'll fake injuries in order to get out of prison, in order to get a
Oh,
hospital stay, because it is a mini vacation for them just to get out of prison for a few days in
yeah,
order to
you
get a
wouldn't believe some of the steps they would take. For instance, at Walpole, one of the things that was fairly notorious was swallowing razor blades. They would get their hands on razor blades and a roll of tape, whether it be electrical tape or masking tape, whatever it is. They would tape the razor blade fully so they could swallow it without rendering damage to their insides on the way down.
oh,
And then they would get to trust me, they would get to the hospital and X-ray, excuse me, an X-ray would reveal uh, the razor blade in their belly, in their stomach, and they would face surgery. But for them, that was 3, 4, 5 days out of the prison, and like you say, it was a they'd go to these drastic means to get out for a little while, see the outside world, even if it meant surgery. Um, Light bulbs. They were famous for breaking up and chewing light bulbs so the glass would go down into their guts. Yeah, oh yeah.
oh,
Just some real, oh, the stuff they would do to themselves. And then there were those that really wanted to do away with themselves, who there were a lot of hangings that took place, some successful. Um, I once had an inmate who wrapped himself in bed sheets and lit the sheets on fire. And before the corrections officers could get into his cell, he was long gone. They were pretty desperate, particularly the guys who were in for life. They weren't going anywhere, and so they would take these steps to get out for a little while.
wow.
Um, and then there were the injuries too. This was the one that would always different ways for these guys to hurt each other. I'll put it that way. I do mention in the book there's one scenario where there's a basketball game going on out the course of the guys in the towers, and they were playing basketball. And there was one guy who was a real ringer and upsetting the opposition, so to speak.
Okay.
And so three of them picked him up, two at the torso, one at the ankles, and they ran him full speed into a basketball stanchion and shattered both his femurs, the long leg bones.
Oh,
I was the unfortunate EMT who responded to that call, and I had to drive him. Me and my partner had to drive him from MCI Walpole Prison all the way to the Brigham and Women's Hospital, which is a good 30, 40-minute ride. But the worst part, there's a segment of roadway that you have to drive over that has railroad tracks, trolley tracks.
mm-hmm.
And we weren't qualified to administer pain medication. So this guy had to suffer the pain of the two breaks, entire ride, including going over this real bumpy road. And
Oh,
I actually felt bad for him. I really did. He did nothing to deserve what he got. Um,
oh.
yeah, major surgery. Never walked normal again after that, as far as I know. Those are kind of some of the things you'd encounter in the prison
Oh
on
my
an almost
God.
regular basis. Yeah. Excuse me. So
So
I saw a lot of
let,
things.
let me ask you then, Dan, about your mental health and your mental well-being, having seen some of this stuff. I mean, is it something where you go talk to somebody about this stuff so you can get
No, I
yourself?
mean, obviously, personally, there are some EMTs who utilize those resources. It is available to EMTs, paramedics, firefighters, police. because you do see some things out there in the world that probably most people wouldn't want to see in their day to day. I don't know. I had a different stance on it. Um, it wasn't that I was cold about it. I was just a little more seasoned, I guess you could say. I had a different attitude about it that, as long as it's not me, you know, as long as I don't end up in one of these places, meaning the prisons, which is kind of funny. It brings up a side story. When I was interviewing Rocco for the first book, Shots in the Dark, I was sitting in the visiting room waiting for him to come down from the tier. Every time I showed up, they would have to call him and he'd come down. And one of the corrections officers came over to me and he struck up a conversation. He says, I got to ask you, why are you coming in here so often to see this guy? I know he's interesting, but, I got to ask you. I said, well, I'm writing a book about him. I'm writing a biography about his escapades in criminal activities and so forth. He says, oh, that makes a lot of sense. He says, I said to the corrections officer, I said, can I ask you a question? If I should ever end up here for some kind of crime someday, I said, all this visiting time with Rocco, do I get that as time served? And he laughed. He says, no, you're going to do the whole bit and we're going to enjoy it.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
Of all the pain and the stress and other things that go on in jail, there are some funny things that take place. There really are. And I was witness. So
I'm sure
very interesting places.
I'm sure there's quite a bit of gallows humor that goes on too there, but I mean, still.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, you have to keep yourself sane there somehow, but man.
Yeah, I had things I did on the side. At the time when I was working as an EMT, all those years I was a long distance runner, and I would run races every weekend. I'd train 7 days a week. I'd be out training morning, noon, night. And so I think a lot of the running, they do say running has healing attributes. And I think it probably helped me offset the stress of what I was doing for a living.
Oh, sure.
After I left being an EMT, I did that for 20 years, EMT, then a 911 dispatcher to follow. My next 20-year career, I worked for a major utility, a gas company, where I oversaw gas leak repairs in the street, which in their own right are pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
And I had some encounters in that job that you could probably write a book about. It was very interesting. And a couple times my life was at stake. So, you get used to it. You kind of brush it off after so many years of fear and the different things that you encounter in these two jobs. So I gave a library talk for the first book. And when I was doing my bio, about 75 people in the audience, I was going through my bio and I mentioned how I worked as an EMT going in and out of dangerous prisons and so forth. Then a supervisor overseeing major gas leaks and crises of that nature. And, and a woman in the audience raised her hand. She stopped me. She says, what do you do in your free time when you're not, going into prisons and chasing gas leaks? I said, I sit down with mobsters and I write mob books.
I was gonna say, is there a little bit of an adrenaline junkie in you here, Dan? Is that
maybe just a little bit? Yeah. Yep. I got the real sense of the adrenaline. I love to tell people that when I was working on the first book, Shots in the Dark, I actually had dinner with the head of New England Cosa Nostra, the head boss, the top guy. And when I stopped shaking enough to ask him questions, it was really interesting. And to my final days, it's one of my bragging rights is I actually had an interview dinner with the head of the mob in New England. So
wow,
that was a huge thing.
And live to tell the tale, right?
And I did, yes. My wife was home waiting to hear from me. She was so nervous. How did it go? How did it go? I said it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Sitting down and talking to this guy, he was a laugh a minute too. He had so many jokes, and here's a guy that spent over 30 years in prison. He's still telling jokes.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, again, you got to have that gallows humor, right? You got to have something to keep
Yes, you
you.
do.
Exactly, exactly. Uh, well, let's get into a little bit about a guy who really didn't have a lot of gallows humor. It seems like from reading the book, and that's Leroy Chasson.
Yeah. I guess you could say he was a criminal from the get-go. Very early on, he was getting arrested for breaking and entering into people's homes. He had a penchant for lighting fires. He would light a garage, he'd light a car on fire just for giggles, just for kicks. Stole a lot of things. You try to you look into a person and try to find out why they are the way they are. And I really can't place it, honestly, other than the fact that there were so many children in his family and his parents really couldn't dedicate anyone, including Leroy Jason. Um, his family was so large, he even had two sets of twins siblings.
Really?
So it gives you an idea. And the parents, admittedly, they did. But if Leroy wanted to be a criminal, there was little they were going to do to stop him from doing that. They just didn't have the time or the means to really, you know, um, focus on one when they had so many. And he got into a lot of trouble as a youth. Here in Massachusetts, we used to have a youth judicial system where kids up to the age of 18 would go to these facilities and reform schools, and they were very, very unpleasant places. And Leroy would spend an awful lot of time of his early life behind locked doors in these places, and they just weren't nice. The people who ran them were abusive. I know that from two sources, more than two sources, that people who would spend time there, they actually didn't want to talk about it, but eventually I got it out of them. And it's just these kids, and a lot of them, it was just petty crimes, homeschools for petty crimes, including Leroy. But he continued to, he began his escape career, I guess you could say, very early on, busting out of these places. They weren't that secure. And every time the police picked him up and brought him back, they would restart the clock.
Mm,
He
mm,
would
mm.
eventually, spend most until he joined the big leagues, as I call it, and committed an armed robbery. And from that crime, he was sent to an actual prison. First Walpole, then later Concord, as a step down. So he was introduced to that at a very early age, 20, 21 years old. He's in MCI Walpole major prison.
So it's that armed robbery that really starts him on his way and gets him introduced to the major systems.
Yes, he robbed a pharmacy in Cambridge, Massachusetts, at gunpoint. He assaulted the store owner, and then during the midst of that crime, when the police showed up and he had snuck down into a basement beneath the pharmacy, the police sought him out. One officer went down and captured him and took him hostage. Eventually gave up, and off to prison he goes for a number of charges, primarily the Massachusetts, admittedly, doesn't have the most stringent justice system. A lot of these guys get out of prison early. As a matter of fact, as we speak, the state is tearing down two of the facilities because they're not putting people in jail as much. They're putting them in programs. So a lot of our gone behind bars here in the state are walking the streets, which doesn't bode well. But you can't fight City Hall, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's for sure. I tell you what, Dan, let's take a break here. When we come back, let's get in a little bit to what happens that fateful night where Leroy turns the corner here and where he really starts to get into some major trouble. In fact, the trouble that we're talking about here in this book, Chasson's Run, the full name of the book, Chasson'S Run, The Prison Break That Captivated America and the Love Story That Fueled It. And we'll get a little bit into not only Leroy's, what Leroy gets into here and the full story of the circumstances of what spurs this run of Leroy, so to speak, or what gets him on the run. But then,
Yes.
but then what the circumstances that get him eventually arrested, thrown into jail, and the circumstances of him killing a man, which
Yes.
this is a big story, folks, and I tell you, the book is fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating, and I tell you, I was spellbound throughout the entire book as to how this man has a sense of detachment. That's one of the things that I want to bring up with Dan in the second part of the program here, is how he manages to not only have people around him, but at the same time be so detached from people. There's something about how he manages to bring people in, but at the same time, he doesn't have people around him. It's a very psychopathic.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a very psychopathic. He's a classic psychopath. Let's put it that way. But
Yes, he is. Yeah.
it's a very different type of psychopath. He doesn't have the classic charm of a like a Ted Bundy, but he's the type where he's got just enough to lure you in, but not enough to maintain you, I guess is the way to put it. So we'll get a sense of who he is with Dan Zimmerman when we come back. Again, the book is Chasson'S Run, The Prison Break That Captivated America and the Love Story That Fueled It. We have a link in the description of this program so you can get a copy of it yourself. Do that during the break. When we come back, more with Daniel Zimmerman when we come back right here on True Crime Tuesday. Welcome back to the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. My guest is Daniel Zimmerman. The name of the book is Chasson'S Run, The Prison Break That Captivated America and the Love Story That Fueled It. Before the break, we were telling you that Leroy Chasson was one of those classic psychopaths, but not in the vein of Ted Bundy. He's one of those who has a little bit of charm, enough to get people in, but not enough to maintain them. I guess the best way to put it is I want to focus a little bit here before we get into our story here, Dan. I want to focus first on his girlfriend that he has the son with. It seems like he has a girlfriend that he has a son with, right? That he maintains an apartment with when we first start the story, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That was actually
this is kind of it gets kind of.
So the girlfriend is named Linnell. Yeah, they're not really introduced into the story until after Chasson admits his crime in Quincy, the crime that sent him to prison for life. That is part of the early stages of his escape, where he's picking up fresh clothing and some weapons that he had stashed. And that's when you meet his girlfriend, Linnell, and her 3-year-old son, Derek. Turns out later on, it's found out that by Derek, who grew up as thinking Chasson was his dad. He was not, in fact, his dad. His mother divulged that secret that she'd kept for many years, that Chasson was not his dad, but she feared to let Chasson know the truth because he had been supporting her for all those years. And she figured if he discovered that he wasn't really the father, bad things might happen. So she kept it a secret until the bitter end, I guess you could.
Really? I find that odd too, that had she thought she'd reveal that secret, that he would harm the child instead of.
Well, maybe not even so much harm, but just do some harm to her, not so much harm to the child, because, he's a toddler at the time. He's 3 years old. I met with Derek, and he's in his early 50s now, and it was very strange. But my research and my interview with him triggered something in him that he wanted to find out who his real dad was. So we used the 23andMe system, did some research, did some ancestry research, and found out who his real father was. He had since passed away, but he found other family members, first cousins out in New York City, that he had never known about, and these were his blood relatives. And he thanked me for triggering that effort on his part. After the interview, he says, I'm going to find out who my family really is. Now that I know, all these years, now that I know that Leroy Chasson was not my dad, as I was told. So it was interesting. Interesting for him, interesting for me to discover that information. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was a sad case. His mother got involved in drugs, and just kind of a sad situation. But she kept it a secret for many years. You were right about what you said about Leroy. I hate to say it about my character, who I spent five of my years redeeming qualities about this guy. And it was interesting for me as I wrote, because in my first book, quite the opposite with Rocco Bolero, where Rocco was I used to describe him in my talks as, he had a heart of gold, as opposed to Leroy, very violent. You're right. He was suave. He brought people in because of that mannerism, the way he carried himself, and the way he. But then you flip a switch, and he was an entirely different person, extremely violent. I described him, and I borrowed an old book, old movie, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and he was clearly both of those. You just didn't know which one you were going to get. Unfortunately, on a warm August night, 1977, you got the worst of the two, when he murdered a 20-year-old kid in the midst of a fight. That's what triggered his trip to the prison, trip to obviously courtroom first, and then prison to follow. And it was such a petty situation too. The reason, just to explain how he ended up where he did and how this murder took place, he was at the tail end of his prison sentence at MCI Concord. He winding down towards a parole, a few assaults on other inmates and corrections officers, which he was famous for. But somehow he managed always to skate through those. So he was nearing parole. He had a friend in prison by the name of Mark Bray, Bray. Mark was getting ready to escape from Concord. He decided he didn't want to stay anymore, which, if you think about it, was actually pretty ridiculous. He would have gotten out in a reasonable amount of time. Instead, he decides to walk away, which anytime an inmate escapes from prison, you're restarting the clock. And Mr. Bray did that. What he wanted was, as many witnesses, this drug dealer would send drugs to the prison via a courier. And that courier would either give up the drugs and exchange money or vice versa. And so Mr. Bray made a drug deal with this individual and been paroled. He's out free, legal, and said, would you mind running an errand for me and go down to Quincy, Massachusetts, and get my $50? Or the drugs he owes me that's worth $50. Either one. And Jason was like, when he had a friend, you were a friend for life. And Mr. Bray and him were inseparable. And he agreed to do it. So he gets a ride to Quincy. And while he's there, he encounters the individual that he's seeking by the name of Kevin Reset. And when Kevin doesn't cooperate, Chasson punches him in the face, knocks him flat out. And to show you the strength of Leroy Chasson in these situations, Reset outweighed him by about 60, 70 pounds and still ended up on his backside. As a result of Chasson hitting this guy, there were about a dozen Quincy youths gathered around, shooting the breeze, having a beer, and they saw this happen and they launched to support their friend who was now trying to get up off the ground. And they all jumped on Chasson. Now, Chasson, in trial, claimed that one of these individuals had a knife, dropped it, he picked it up and used it in his self-defense. He actually brought the knife with him. He stabbed two, one fatally, 20-year-old youth whose dad happened to be a Boston police officer, and another gentleman who suffered sustained wounds to his kidneys. He fully recovered. Chasson took off. He got the same ride that got him there. He got him out of there. And eventually he joined up with Mark Bray and one other friend, and they went on the run because now he's being sought for murder. It isn't just, one of his petty crimes that he had performed earlier. In the midst of his run, they end up in Boston. They're figuring out where they're going to go, what they're going to do. And he has Mark Bray retrieve what he called the package. And that package was Kathleen MacDonald. Kathleen and Leroy earlier had struck up a relationship as pen pals. Leroy was locked up at Walpole at the time, and he was looking for $500 for an appeal. That's what the attorney wanted, $500. And he put an ad in the paper asking for $1 donations times as many people, hoping to get to 500. And Kathleen read the ad, sent him a greeting card with a dollar bill in it and her mailing address. And they became pen pals, and they fell in love. The stickler for Miss MacDonald was that she was married with 6 children. But that actually resolved itself because she was also into drugs and drinking and spent some time in an institution trying to clean up. And her husband divorced her and took the kids, and that left her free to move on with her relationship with Chasson until he murdered somebody. Now he's back in jail. So they continued the relationship. She moved close to him. She moved to an apartment in Walpole, literally minutes from the prison, so that would give her direct access to visits and to go see him. They ultimately got married in prison, which was allowable. I've known inmates who have gotten married in the chapel. And then the relationship continued on for about 5 years, 4.5, 5 years, when Mr. Chasson decided he didn't want to stay in prison anymore and started to piece together with Kathleen an escape, a plan to break out. Now, I don't know if you know Walpole Prison. It wasn't the type of prison that you could actually just break out of. 18-foot walls, razor wire on the top, some areas electric charged. There were no successful escapes from MCI Walpole since it was built in the 50s. But Leroy was smarter than the average inmate, it seems. He decided that the best way to get out of a prison, escape from a prison, is to do it from outside of the prison. And so what he did is one morning, Labor Day weekend of 1982, he got hold of a ballpoint pen and stabbed himself 3 times in the abdomen, pretty deeply. I thought about that. I'd seen a lot of these inmates do these type of things to get out of prison. Mm-hmm. Swallowing razor blades, as I said, light bulbs, whatever, stabbing themselves or getting stabbed by other inmates. You name it, they'd find a way. But to be able to stab yourself more than once had to take a boatload of guts, because that had to hurt hurt like hell. And then
to not miss, right, Dan? I mean, as a medical professional, right? To not miss something vital and to not go deep.
Yes.
Right?
Well, I mean, he had the fortune that one thing I didn't mention was that Kathleen, his girlfriend and wife, had some medical skills herself.
Hmm.
When she got out of the institution and cleaned up her drug addiction, she went to school and became a nursing assistant. It was conjecture. There was conjecture that after the fact that Kathleen aided him by telling him exactly where to stab himself that would render the least amount of damage, but bring on the most amount of bleeding. And she was right on target. Um, so he did it. He stabbed himself 3 times with a pen. Um, Made his way out into the corridor where 2 corrections officers who were standing by during breakfast with the inmates saw him from a distance and ran to his aid. And they eventually brought him to the infirmary in the prison. The doctor there, the house doctor, did some examination and treatment and decided that he should get to the hospital just in case there was some internal bleeding or internal damage to his organs. And so they loaded him up into an ambulance and off he went for the 9-mile ride from MCI Walpole to Norwood Hospital. And on arrival there, they brought Leroy into a trauma room, which is a private room. There's no other patients in there. There's nothing else in there. So he was surrounded by a doctor, a couple of nurses, a couple of assistants, the 2 EMTs that transported him, and 1 corrections officer, unarmed.
Now, so before we get to the trauma room, I want to backtrack a little bit here because
sure.
There's some doubt before they got him, or before at the prison. Wasn't there some doubt that maybe he was
faking this or rendering this himself? Yes, there was. But it actually built up steam as the whole scenario developed. At the outset, there was some questions. First of all, the corrections officer who told me the entire story, we actually had a great sit down, and he was more than willing to share it, even though it brought embarrassment to him and his former coworkers for a guy like this to get out of jail the way he did. It was pretty embarrassing for the corrections officers. But there was a few things. First of all, he was bleeding from the mouth as well, and they thought maybe that would indicate internal bleeding. But then he remembered that Halloween, kids would get these capsules, the vampire capsules, snap them in their mouths, and then the blood would run down their chin. It wasn't really blood; it was just food coloring. But he looked at the blood coming out of Chasson's mouth and kind of stirred some questions in him. At first, he was telling him that another inmate did this, and then he started to indicate that maybe not. It happened some other way. The wheels were spinning, so to speak, but not to the degree that he wasn't going to follow doctor's orders and take Chasson to the hospital as ordered.
Didn't Chasson say something to the effect of "I'm going to get him, I'm going to get him," but he wouldn't say who, right?
Say a name, right? Well, that's common though. You know, when they talk about retaliation in the prison, they're not going to name names to a corrections officer. They'll keep that under wraps. So that really didn't cause a lot of strife or any confusion. One of the things in the aftermath that was determined was a huge mistake on the part of the corrections officers was that they did not put belly chains on Chasson. Protocol at the Massachusetts prisons calls for leg irons, so you have very limited walk, where you can walk but very limited. A belly chain, which is a steel chain that wraps around your waist and comes to the front, and then it's usually attached to handcuffs. When this corrections officer asked the doctor how they should tie him up, wrap him up, doctor says, just use the leg irons. Don't put any belly chains on him because it could exacerbate the wounds on his abdomen. Rubbing on that site could start more bleeding, so we're going to leave those off. And that was a huge gimme in Mr. Chasson's corner. He really won that one. There was talk amongst the police and the state police investigators after the fact that Kathleen knew or had a sense that if he wounded himself in a certain way, they wouldn't attach the belly chains. It would make it easier for him to do what he was going to do next. And whether that was true or not, she was right. The lack of the belly chains, the lack of the handcuffs, really gave Chasson a lot of freedom of movement when he needed it.
Yeah.
So yeah. So he arrives at the hospital, and the next big mistake they made, they had 3 corrections officers that were escorting him. Typically, it's only 2, but they were worried about him because of his knack for escaping. So when they got there, 1 went into the trauma room with him, along with nurses, doctors, EMTs. 1 with the gun, and they only 1 carries a gun, went down the corridor at the other end of the hospital to call the prison to let them know they had arrived. And the 3rd one, the one I interviewed, was more than willing to admit that he had to visit the restroom. So he told his colleague, I'm going to run in the restroom. I'll be out as quick as I can. And off he goes to a restroom, leaving 1 corrections officer with Chasson unarmed. He didn't have a gun. So a little time goes by. They stick an IV into Lee's arm, oxygen. They put on cardiac leads. So they want to check make sure his heart is okay. They dress and clean the wounds. Everything, the bleeding gets stopped. And a little time goes by, and next thing you know, there's another nurse coming into the room, fully dressed as a nurse. She has a towel draped over her arm as if you were a waiter in a fine dining restaurant and you're waiting for a spill. She's got this towel draped over one arm. And nobody's really paying much attention to her. She doesn't look familiar to them, but it's a holiday. It is Labor Day, and they figure, okay, maybe they hired a few agency nurses to come in and fill vacancies. And things are starting to heat up. And all of a sudden, she pulls off the towel, and she's holding a .45 automatic pointing at the staff. Meanwhile, Leroy sits up in the stretcher and starts to pull out all the tubing and wires and everything else that had been stuck in his body. He's bleeding now from where the IV was because he just yanked it right out of his arm. Jumps off the stretcher, and she comes over and hands him the gun. So now you've got an ex-convict, a lifer, a murderer, in a room filled with half a dozen people, and he's pointing a gun at them.
Jeez.
And his final words as he departs the room were basically, they went down in infamy because just about every newspaper of the time used it. Sorry, folks, but I got to go. And with those words, he ran out of the room. Or should I say he shuffled out of the room because he couldn't run, the chains in his legs.
Yep.
Kathleen led. She went out. And the fact that she was ahead of him by a little ways was actually planned because she had to get to the getaway car, get it started, open the doors for him. In the meantime, one of the corrections officers who was in the men's room saw them come out of the room. He bolted for the front of the hospital, the visiting room, seeking a phone, call for help, while they were running out of the hospital. Then he saw his colleague with the gun down the corridor talking on the phone and yelled at him, "We need the gun. We need the gun." Those weren't the exact words he used, but in interest of keeping it clean. So anyways, his colleague comes running with the gun. They run out in the parking lot. Leroy's still trying to make it to the car. There is a shootout between the fleeing fugitive and the corrections officer. Nobody got hit. A few cars got hit. Bullets were embedded in the wall. That later became a tourist attraction. People were coming, taking pictures of the bullet holes in the wall where the big escape happened. And off they went. They drove out of the parking lot. The shooting stopped. Everybody's just kind of stunned. The Norwood police show up in force. They do a search. What they eventually find is the getaway car. As it turns out, one of my key witnesses, or not witnesses, but interview candidates, Kathleen's son, sat down with me and explained how they made that escape. There was an accomplice. To this day, he's not named because he's still alive.
Hmm.
And the person I interviewed refused to share his name or anything about him because this individual obviously would be frightened that he might be apprehended and incarcerated for aiding and abetting a convicted killer.
Sure.
Makes sense. But he really did the job as an accomplice because not only did he give them a second car, which he left running, they timed it so well that he left the car running in a supermarket parking lot. He left them clothing, change of clothing, money, an envelope filled with money. And the ultimate item, according to the police, a pair of bolt cutters so they could cut off his leg irons and be free.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and off they go.
Yeah.
Um, and they were gone for 7 years, which is the part a lot of people find totally amazing that these two eluded the FBI, eluded a prison task force that was put together to chase them down, and every police agency from coast to coast. And only a couple of times were they even close to being captured, but I called them the Teflon criminals. They managed to get away from everybody during an 18-month journey across country. They went from the Norwood Hospital to Seabrook, New Hampshire, to Chicago, Seattle, Kansas City, Las Vegas, and eventually arrived in Colorado, which was their last stop.
Yeah. Amazing at that. And even managed to change the way that they did business between the prisons and the hospital. They're that in itself was amazing.
I was I guess you could say I was one of the first test dummies for that. Soon after the escape, I was working, and I had a gentleman from Walpole I was transporting to Norwood Hospital with a heart attack, and it was clear he was having a heart attack because he had one before. He had all the symptoms. He knew he was having a heart attack. He was 50 years old. Took him to Norwood Hospital. By their new policy, because of the escape, they would not let him in the building, even though there was a potential that he could cardiac arrest and die. What they did instead, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. I'm sitting in the front of the ambulance. My partner's in the back. They come out of the hospital, a doctor and a nurse. He's got a defib where he's going to check his, do an EKG on him, do all this stuff. And then they determined that he was stable enough to make it into Boston, where Boston hospitals weren't refusing anybody. They had to take patients. Mm-hmm. Inmates are not. But Norwood Hospital refused to take inmates no matter what the condition. There were a lot of jokes about the hospital. They used to call them you could get treated at Norwood Hospital faster than you can get a Big Mac meal at the MacDonald's. Yeah, no matter what was wrong with you. I remember one of my colleagues actually brought a guy in that was cut with a knife at the prison, and they actually sutured him in the ambulance. They brought a suture kit out and did the sutures in the ambulance.
Wow.
So they wouldn't have to bring him inside. So yeah, there was a lot of strife, a lot of finger pointing. How could this happen? Why did this happen? And time goes on. They were searching for Mr. Chasson and Kathleen without much luck until the late 80s.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave that for the book as to the eventual conclusion of what happened.
Yes.
To this story, because it's an incredibly surprising conclusion. We'll put it that way.
I just want to give you one little thing on the conclusion. Sure.
Yeah.
It involved, for people who watch true crime TV, mm-hmm. They'll recognize the show America's Most Wanted. And America's Most Wanted played a role in the conclusion to this interesting story.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny how that program has played a role in a lot of modern day endings in stories.
Yeah. Well, I did research on the show. They were responsible for 1,200 arrests during the main run of that show. 1,200 arrests. That's 1,200 fugitives who could be free today if it weren't for that show. So I guess they should take a bow.
And as you point out in the book, they're bringing it back, or they've brought it back for a new season with Walsh and his son, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's got staying power. It's a powerful show in
yes, it is.
Format and what they do. and people gravitate to it. I mean, it's been put up against some blockbuster shows and has managed to have a formula that stands the test of time.
Yes, it does. I agree.
So it's obviously it resonates with people. It's and say, you know what, I know I can help, and so they reach out, they help.
Yeah. It allows Joe Citizen to get involved in solving crimes. And America's Most Wanted was not broadcasting crimes of minor stuff. It was, these guys were the top dogs of your criminal world. A lot of murder, a lot of rape, a lot of bad things. Yeah. And this show put away 1,200 people.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have it back. I know that. So and I'm excited to see what they can do in this day and age. Because in this day and age, with so much technologically, Dan, that's out there.
Yes.
I mean, information travels fast, but really, television's kind of the snail mail of technology, right? But still, you can take a clip from what's being shown on TV, put it on the internet, and it probably spreads like wildfire. But they're still doing it on television, but allowing it to travel in other means. I mean, it's
well. I mean, if you look at this book, my book Chasson's Run, a lot of what took place, they didn't have DNA, they didn't have like you say, they didn't have the internet or the social media to share information with each other. All it was visual. People saw something. So I guess that still holds up in a lot of cases, even today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where they tell you to see, if you see something, say something. So,
right.
Yep.
I know with this story, we only just hit the highlights. There's so much more to this story, and there's so much more to Leroy Chasson's story and the players around it. And there's so much more to the complex tapestry that is Leroy Chasson that makes him an interesting case study that I think people should dig into. And so I'm encouraging people to go get this book, because they really do need to dig into this entire case. And even Kathleen herself is an interesting person that you go into detail as to who she is. And boy, she is a case in herself.
Yes, she is. Yeah.
So I encourage people to pick up Chasson's Run. Chasson's Run, the prison break that captivated America and the love story that fueled it. We have a link in the description of this program. Go get this book, folks. It's put up by Wild Blue Press. Daniel Zimmerman, I want to thank you so much for being with us today, and I wish you the best of luck with the book.
I thank you for having me. This was very enjoyable. I'm glad I could had an opportunity to tell my story.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being with us. And hey, there's got to be another one in you, right?
Well, if you ever want to have me back, I'd love to tell the story of my first book, Shots in the Dark.
Yes.
That in itself we probably need about 3 or 4 hours. I've had libraries ask me to leave because there's so much to that story. Rocco Bolero was an amazing character.
Well, let's do that. Let's do that. We'll have you back with Shots in the Dark, and we'll talk.
That would be outstanding. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, Daniel Zimmerman. Well, I'll tell you what, folks, let's lighten things up a little bit. Let's bring in Jessica Freeberg. It's time now for Dumb Crimes and Stupid Criminals.
It's Crayon News story time.
What happened with this dude, Christ Bearer? I heard he cut his penis off and then jumped off a balcony.
Suspect pulls gun from butt, shoots twice at Denver police.
What is your emergency?
I need help.
And what's the problem?
I'm too high.
You're too high?
Yeah.
It's that time, the time you've all been looking forward to. It's time now for Dumb Crimes and Stupid Criminals. And with that, we need a co-hostess. So, I went to the Yellow Pages. I know you people may be going, what's a Yellow Pages? A Yellow Pages is one of those big yellow books that we used to get when we were very young. They used to bring it to our front step, and you have to look in the C section of the Yellow Pages for co-hostess. There was none to be found. So, of course, I went to my Rolodex. You may say, what's a Rolodex? Well, it's one of those things with cards in it where you go to the C section for co-hostess, and, of course, they don't sell those anymore, so you don't know what I'm talking about. So I went to my cell phone. And my cell phone, of course, has a number for co-hostess, which would be under C as well. And, of course, there's no co-hostess under C. I'm really bad at this game. So anyway, I went, of course, to my most talented, my most funny, my most witty, and the one who breaks records over there at the Hindustan Times, because she's got three books out there right now and more to come. I think there's probably 17 of them coming from her publisher. And of course, she's easy on the eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, here she is, Jessica Freeberg. Jess, as I mentioned to you before the show, hopefully you don't have liquid in your mouth. You're not about to spit it at the camera. You have that look on your face like you're about to do that. Where was I going with this? I don't know. I've gotten lost in my own intro. We have for Mally for the last couple of weeks, and we mentioned this on Supernatural News. We do have a co-host introduction writing contest going on. So if our listeners would like to write you an intro, they can, not only to save me a little bit of work here, but probably to do a better job than I could ever do introducing you on
Is
Dumb
it
Crimes.
possible, Tim?
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah. So if they feel they can do a better job introducing you than I can, then by all means, tim@darknessradio.com. Submit your introductions for Jessica here.
Oh, I love it. That sounds so fun.
Yeah. Because please, spare us all the agony that I'm giving you right now by introducing Jessica.
Help.
Before we get started today, I'm going to deliver a little bit of bad news. I'm sorry, Jess. I know I told you about it before we got started today, but one of my favorite all-time artists passed away today. We're recording on Monday, of course, for Tuesday. We always record one day ahead. There. I've pulled back the curtain, Jess. Isn't that horrible? The secret's out. But Sly Stone of Sly and the Family Stone passed away today at the age of 82. For you youngsters who don't know, he inspired such artists as Prince, Michael Jackson, among others.
Yeah.
Red Hot Chili Peppers. I know you're familiar with them, Jess.
I'm a fan.
You're a fan? Yep. In fact, the Red Hot Chili Peppers covered If You Want Me to Stay. That was one of Sly and the Family Stone's songs. Sly, unfortunately, had a prolonged battle with COPD, chronic obstructed pulmonary disease, along with other underlying health issues that took him, which is unfortunate. I suppose something gets us all in the end, right? At least that's what they say. You never get out of this life alive, right?
That's exactly right.
Yep. The artist's family wrote, "It is with profound sadness that we announce the passing of our beloved dad, Sly Stone of Sly and the Family Stone. After a prolonged battle with COPD and other underlying health issues, Sly passed away peacefully, surrounded by his 3 children, his closest friend, and his extended family. While we mourn his absence, we take solace in knowing that his extraordinary musical legacy will continue to resonate and inspire for generations to come." So Sly Stone is gone at the age of 82. But we do have his music. So there you go.
Yeah, that's a sad way to start off the show, but I'm glad he got to live a long life. I mean, 82, that's nothing to turn your nose up at.
No, not at all.
I'll take it.
That's right. That's right. So in the meantime, you can dance to the music. See, another Sly and the Family Stone song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we can still keep happy memories of Sly and the Family Stone. So there you go. All right, we're going to start it off today, probably not with a happy ending for another guy. We'll do it that way, Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals. But we'll jump right into it today. An ex-Maryland trooper, Jess, who used Facebook to sell an informant's identity to a drug dealer for $1,500 has now learned his fate.
Oh, no.
Oh,
That's scary.
We're jumping right into it. If you think again, we're going to make you a little uneasy today as we start Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals. If you think you're safe because you've ratted out a criminal, sometimes you're not. Because there are some dumb cops out there.
Yeah, that's pretty good cash, though, for him.
$1,500. That was it.
I mean,
that's all the guy got.
All he had to do was give one name up, though. That's like a 10-second, $1,500 for 10 seconds of your time.
But that's all one life was worth. $1,500. That's not a lot.
No, it's not.
35-year-old Justin Riggs of Smithsburg, is pleaded guilty in U.S. District Court on 3 counts, including bribery. A former Maryland State Police corporal who created a burner Facebook account reached out to a drug dealer and sold him the identity of a confidential informant for $1,500, was ordered on Thursday to serve 6 years, Jess. Only 6 years in federal prison. I get the willies at this entire story.
Yes.
Because that's it. 6 years.
That's not enough.
No. U.S. District Judge Stephanie A. Gallagher sentenced 35-year-old Justin Riggs of Smithsburg on 3 counts, including bribery. He must also spend 3 years on supervised release. Now, you're assuming he's going to make it through that as well, because again, former cop goes into the pen.
He's not going to have it easy.
No. He's a rat. One. He's flipped.
Yeah, ratting out another rat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't, he's a pig who's a rat who's flipped, and he's now gone into the jail. And he's not going to be segregated by any means. He's not going to get protection from any of the jail guards. So it's going to be a rough.
It's not a good situation to be in.
Nope. Mr. Riggs, I know this is a slightly longer sentence than you wanted, said Gallagher, who noted the seriousness of the crime. I certainly hope that you're able to use this time productively. Running and covering is behind, I bet. Gallagher brought up the level of support that Riggs has from his family members. She said she believes that he still has a lot to offer the community. Like what? Riggs joined the Maryland State Police in 2012 and was assigned to the West Regional Enforcement Narcotics Section. Law enforcement was investigating a drug trafficking ring in Western Maryland and worked with a confidential informant who repeatedly bought cocaine and methamphetamine while investigators recorded the drug deals. On December 19th of 2022, Riggs created a fake Facebook account and 2 days later connected with the drug dealer. Here's the quote. "Hey, I work for a Fed agency that has started a very serious case," Riggs wrote. "I'm looking to receive payment for info I can give you and hopefully work with you for info you need in the future." So he was looking to do this on a regular basis, Jess.
That's so skeezy.
Mm-hmm. Riggs told the drug distributor, as a measure of good faith, that there was a tracking device on his truck and offered advice on how to throw off law enforcement.
Wow.
Yeah. He went on to say, oh, God. I mean, I'm just shocked at the lengths he went to here. He they stayed in touch, it says here, and the two later started to negotiate a price. At one point, Riggs remarked, "I know what'll happen to the rat." So he willingly gave the guy up for $1,500.
That's so gross.
He also said, "I have tons more info pertaining to your biggest informant who's doing you dirty, the status of your case and what you should do, and a lot more." The drug dealer on January 3rd, 2023, left a total of $1,800, $1,500 for the identity of the confidential informant, and $300 for other information in the back of the Red Roof Inn, Hagerstown, Williamsport, behind the dumpsters. The FBI had caught wind of the scheme, swapped out the cash, and placed the area under constant surveillance. Later, Riggs sent an unwitting acquaintance to pick up the money. Riggs resigned from the force in 2023 following his arrest. Assistant U.S. Attorney Sean Delaney pushed for a sentence of 9 years in prison, arguing that Riggs sold the identity of a confidential informant to a violent and dangerous drug trafficking organization so it could murder him. Delaney read some of the messages that Riggs sent to the drug dealer on Facebook, including, "But like I said, I can help you by telling you the snitch. One, he's gone, then your case should be gone, because he won't be able to testify against you." Riggs, he said, sought to establish a long-term relationship with the drug traffickers, ensuring that they would continue to operate and harm more people. Though Riggs rose above challenges that he experienced in his childhood, he became greedy, Delaney said. He spoke about how the crime could put a chill on people agreeing to become confidential informants. And honestly, Delaney said, who could blame them? This crime is deadly serious, Delaney said. The sale of the life of another human being for $1,500. Meanwhile, Assistant Federal Public Defender Eric Pilch, one of Riggs' attorneys, recommended a sentence of 4 years in prison. That's it, just 4 years. For over a decade, Justin Riggs wore the uniform of the Maryland State Police with distinction, Pilch said. He led an unblemished life. He just screwed up at the end. That's all he's saying. You know, he just made a little tiny mistake. Pilch said his client took dangerous people off the street and displayed courage and tenacity on the force. Riggs graduated from Middletown High School in 2007 and earned his bachelor's degree in criminology and investigations in 2011 from West Virginia University. He married his high school sweetheart, Kayla, who sat in the courtroom gallery in support. They have 2 young children. In 2018, Riggs was part of the first group of officers to respond to the shooting at the Capitol Gazette, where a gunman murdered 5 people, according to Pilch. But Riggs, he said, was thrown off track due to a confluence of factors, mainly psychological trauma, financial pressure, and hazardous chemical exposure. So he became a mutant gone wrong because of hazardous chemical exposure. It's like a comic book, Jess.
That's a stretch, I think.
You think?
I think so.
From his experience working in law enforcement, Riggs scored high on a checklist for post-traumatic stress disorder, Pilch said. So it's PTSD that turned him into a criminal, along with hazardous chemical exposure.
So many excuses.
Yeah. In 2021, Riggs was burnt out from working as a trooper and started a furniture business called Oak and Steel, which he then expanded into a coffee shop, Brew 30. But it became a bottomless pit of debt. I want to see can we get to where the harmless or hazardous chemical came in?
Where was he exposed?
Where did that happen? Let's see here. Can I skip forward in the story and figure out where that happened? I don't think
He ate too many Cheetos. That's what it was.
I think that's what it was.
Those are hazardous.
Cheeto dust and radioactive waste, I think, happened and turned him into Daredevil. Yes. It doesn't say. Well, in spite of his actions, Riggs expressed hope that people will continue to trust the police. He's hoping he hasn't broken the trust of the police with local people. So
yeah, he probably has.
He has. Yeah, he's shattered it irrevocably, however you say that. He says, I took an oath that I selfishly broke. Yeah, you did. Too bad for you, sonny boy. Meanwhile, a Chinese couple is charged with smuggling crop-killing fungus into the U.S., Jess.
Ew, disgusting.
Yeah, we're not talking about rare mushrooms either. Although we will talk about mushrooms in a bit. I found a way to tie all this in. We're going on a drug spree here in just a moment. Federal prosecutors accused 2 Chinese scientists of smuggling into the U.S. a dangerous fungus that causes a disease in crops so that one of them could research the pathogen at a University of Michigan laboratory.
Okay. So they brought it in to research it?
Yeah, this doesn't sound so dumb, does it?
Huh.
It sounds kind
they sound really smart, honestly.
It does. It sounds like a smart crime and smarter criminals. But dumb nonetheless.
Let's get to the stupid part, Tim.
That's right. 33-year-old Young King Jian and 34-year-old Zunyang Liu are charged with conspiracy smuggling goods into the United States, false statements, and visa fraud, according to a criminal complaint filed in the U.S. District Court in Detroit. The complaint affidavit and other documents were unsealed on June 3rd. The 2 researchers were in a romantic relationship. Romantic relationship over fungi. And if you're a fungi, you can smuggle fungi, I guess.
Nerd love.
Nerd love. It's so cute. They were in a romantic relationship in July of 2024 when Liu entered the U.S. with small bags of Fusarium graminarum in his backpack. Fusarium graminarum. I've learned a little something today. In his backpack, according to the complaint. Liu later admitted that he planned to use the fungus for research in a laboratory at the University of Michigan, where Jian worked. Both Jian and Liu had researched the pathogen as university students in China, according to the complaint. The fungus, which scientific literature classifies as a potential agroterrorism weapon, can be used to target food crops, according to the affidavit. The toxic fungus cases head blight, which is a disease of wheat, barley, maize, and rice, and is responsible for billions of dollars in economic losses worldwide each year. That according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Michigan. The toxins the fungus produces can cause vomiting as well as liver damage and reproductive defects in livestock and humans.
My gosh.
Yeah.
He just brought it here because.
Yeah, just, for love and agroterrorism, Jess.
Jeez. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. Jian appeared in federal court on June 3rd and was temporarily detained. A detention hearing is set, it was set for June 5th. We don't have the results of what happened there. Attorney Sinad Ramovic, who represented Jian at her initial appearance, had no comment. No attorney was listed in court records for Liu, who is believed to be in China and remains at large. Ooh, an agro-terrorist at large. Which is
scary.
It's also the name of my new romantic record that I'll be releasing later on in the fall.
I mean, honestly, Tim, it is really scary. I mean, you think about if they were to somehow sprinkle that across all our crops and we don't have food.
Right. And whatever food you have is tainted.
Yeah, that's honestly terrifying.
And think you can hit almost every crop except for soybeans and some veggies. But almost
we're all going to have to become vegetarians.
But almost everything there, it covers almost all your base crops, wheat, maize,
like your corn and
rice, everything. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. In a statement on June 3rd, the University of Michigan said it condemns any actions that seek to cause harm, threaten national security, or undermine the university's critical public mission. It's important to note that the university has received no funding from the Chinese government in relation to research conducted by the accused individuals. The university also added, "We have and will continue to cooperate with federal law enforcement in its ongoing investigation and prosecution." By the way, Jian, who obtained a doctorate in plant pathogens from Zhejiang University in China, received money from a Chinese foundation largely funded by the Chinese government to conduct postdoctoral work, according to the affidavit. The work added research to a particular biological pathogen that can cause devastating diseases in crops. So China was researching this stuff.
That's even scarier.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. We go from agro-terrorism to terrorism at a wedding.
Oh, no.
I want to ask you this, Jess. Of all the interesting stuff you've seen at a dance after a wedding, have you ever seen shots fired out of a rented Lamborghini?
No, that's a new one.
Well,
that certainly didn't happen at my wedding.
That's one way to toast the bride and the groom, I guess. One is arrested after shots were fired from a rented Lamborghini during a wedding celebration in Dearborn, Michigan. One is also facing charges, and the Lamborghini was seized. We go to Dearborn, Michigan, where Dearborn police seized a rented Lamborghini after shots were fired from the luxury sports car during a wedding celebration last Sunday evening. The celebration included several cars and went from Canton to Dearborn on Sunday, June 1st, according to police. During the festivities, dashcam footage caught someone firing shots from the passenger side of the purple Lamborghini Huracan near Ford and Evergreen Roads. First of all, great taste, a purple Lamborghini. That's something.
That's swanky.
That is swanky. This prompted the police department to investigate, and the wedding celebration was traced to Dearborn Heights Banquet Hall. The rented Lamborghini was seized, and after police received an anonymous tip, a suspect was arrested. Police say the suspect faces charges for reckless discharge of a firearm. We want the community to know that we are not going to tolerate reckless or dangerous behavior in the name of celebration, said Dearborn Police Chief Issa Sahin. Firing a weapon from a moving vehicle, especially in a crowded area, is not only illegal, but puts lives at risk. Dearborn is a city that welcomes joyful gatherings, but when celebrations turn into public safety threats, we will act swiftly and decisively. Let this be a clear message. If you break the law in our city, we will find you, and we will hold you accountable. So please, no shooting out of a purple Lamborghini. We beg of you. Just saying, right?
Sounds like a fair request.
I mean, you know, if you're going to shoot anything out of a purple Lamborghini, let it be fireworks.
Yeah. Or T-shirts out of one of those guns.
Right. T-shirt guns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
That say just married, right? Just boom.
Bride, groom.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Or, you know, have the wedding date and then the bride and groom on it, right? And you shoot those out to the crowd, right?
That's better than throwing rice or giving party favors.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that idea. Great idea, Jess.
Way less dangerous.
Yeah, you can do burnouts around the crowd, and then you can shoot T-shirts at them.
Everybody wins.
Everybody wins.
Nobody dies.
Well, unless you fire it right at their head and they can't catch. Then somebody dies.
You could get a concussion, for sure.
Then somebody dies.
Close range T-shirt shot.
Internal hemorrhaging all the way around. Yeah,
that would be my luck.
You never know. You just never know. Because some people aren't coordinated.
It's true.
Yeah, it just happens. We have an interesting story here from West Kentucky. It's written up in West Kentucky, but I think it has to do with a Texas man. But is this Texas man actually no, he's in Texas. Or is he in Kentucky? My God, I'm confused.
It's already mysterious.
Let's read it and find out. A Texas man was arrested twice in one day over the Memorial Day weekend for drunk driving.
That's a bad day.
Yeah. Well, evidently he was enjoying himself. It was for drunk driving.
Oh, maybe it was a good day for him.
Well, not if he was arrested
not a safe
twice.
day.
No, not a safe day. Not at all. A Texas man was arrested twice in Lyon County over the Memorial Day weekend. The Lyon County sheriff and a deputy were called about an allegedly intoxicated subject at a business in Eddyville on Sunday. According to the report, 42-year-old Richard Pranita of Edinburgh, Texas, made alarming statements to an employee about driving himself to the business. Pranita, who was charged with DUI, his vehicle was impounded and he was booked into the Crittenden County Detention Center. Then on Memorial Day, after bonding out of jail, Pranita called the sheriff's office from his motel to ask for personal items from his impounded vehicle. Here's where it gets tricky, Jess. Now, when you call the cops and say, I'd like some stuff out of my impounded vehicle, make sure you don't have anything illegal in your impounded vehicle.
Oh, no.
Here's what happened. When the sheriff went to the inventory to collect the items, he reportedly found cocaine among the items in the trunk of Praneta's car.
Oh, come on.
Eddyville police were called to assist. They then went to the motel and arrested Praneta again.
Well, he earned that.
Yeah, he did. Praneta was charged with possession of cocaine, taken back to the Crittenden County Detention Center, where he remained. Twice in one day.
Yeah.
This is the story I got it mixed up with. I thought he was arrested for driving drunk twice in one day. It turns out our next person was driving drunk twice in one day.
Okay.
I told you I got too many good stories today about twice in one day.
Hard to keep track of them all.
Right? Felony charges are filed against a KCSO lieutenant who was accused of driving drunk twice in the same day. It was a productive week. What can I say?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That is you should have known better. Come on.
We go to Bakersfield, California, where 9 felony counts have been filed against a Kern County Sheriff's Detentions lieutenant who allegedly drove drunk and was involved in 2 crashes in 2 hours. Now that's productive.
Whoa.
Yeah. No. Maybe you're not such a great drunk driver after all. I mean, nobody really is, but you know, some people are like, I can drive just fine.
You think you'd learn after the first accident that you should probably hang it up.
Right. Yeah. Not Patrick McNeil, who was charged Wednesday with multiple counts of DUI causing injury, hit and run causing injury, and misdemeanor resisting arrest. Prosecutors say the charges include enhancements for having a high blood alcohol content and injuring more than one person. An arraignment date hasn't been scheduled, sheriff's officials said. McNeil was on administrative leave, as he should be. McNeil crashed twice within hours on March 16th, police said. He was off duty at the time. The first crash happened around noon on Stockdale Highway and Allen Road in southwest Bakersfield. Police said McNeil was cited for driving under the influence, and officers had his car towed and took him home. About 2 hours later, officers were called to a hit-and-run crash at Coffee and 7th Standard Roads. McNeil was identified as the driver who fled and was later found at Laredo Jail, where he was arrested after a short standoff, according to a district attorney's office release. The Kern County District Attorney's Office conducted additional investigations to determine the full extent of injuries to parties in both collisions. Such an investigation was necessary to determine appropriate criminal charges. All right. Our next story, Jess. Remember I told you before we had spores?
Yes.
This one has to do with mushrooms. We're getting there.
Okay.
We're graduating.
Fungi of another name.
Fungi of another name is still a mushroom, right? We're graduating in our substances today as a woman is accused of triple murder and says that foraged mushrooms may have been added to her meal.
And that caused her to kill 3 people?
I guess so. This comes from one of our listeners. Again, if you have a story for us for Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals, Tim@darknessradio.com. Erin Patterson, the woman accused of murdering 3 guests with a meal laced with death cap mushrooms, told her trial on Wednesday she may have inadvertently added foraged mushrooms to the lunch because her duxels tasted a little bland.
What on earth? Got a little salt and pepper, girl.
Yeah. Salt, pepper. Maybe some Lowry's?
I get this great seasoning called Fox Point.
Mm-hmm.
Highly recommend.
Fox Point? Really?
Yeah, it's called Fox Point. It's super good.
Where do you get that?
It's from Penzeys. Penzeys Spices.
Really? Okay.
Delicious on everything.
And you know what? it won't make you kill anybody.
It won't make you die.
Yeah.
It'll just make you happy.
Just make you happy. On the third day of evidence on Wednesday, Patterson was taken through the events of July of 2023 when she's accused of deliberately adding lethal death cap mushrooms to a beef Wellington meal. She's cooked for 4 guests, including her parents-in-law, at her house in the small Australian town of, is it Leongatha in rural Victoria? I'm sure somebody from Australia will correct me. Patterson was denied 3 counts of murder over the death of her in-laws, Don Patterson and Gail Patterson, and Gail's sister, Heather Wilkinson. She's also denied attempting to kill a 4th lunch guest, Heather's husband, Ian Wilkinson, her local pastor.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So she killed her mother-in-law and sister-in-law and the local pastor.
Well, no, the local pastor got away by the grace of God.
How did
you
he
could
survive?
say.
Oh, I suppose.
Yeah.
By the grace of God.
By the grace of God. Taking Patterson back to the days before the lunch, defense lawyer Colin Mandy, SC, asked where she'd bought the ingredients. Patterson said all ingredients came from Woolworths, a major Australian supermarket.
You should have shopped at Penzies.
That's right. Should have shopped at Penzies. Patterson said she found the recipe in a cookbook, which she followed with some deviations, slightly. For example, yeah, a little bit of poison. For example, she said she couldn't find a beef tenderloin log, so she bought twin packs of individual steaks. Okay. The recipe had called for mustard, which she didn't use, nor did she use prosciutto, because Don doesn't eat pork, she said. So no prosciutto. No prosciutto. On the Saturday morning of the lunch, she said she fried garlic and shallots and chopped up the store-bought mushrooms in a food processor. She cooked the sautéed mixture, known as duxels, for perhaps 45 minutes so it was dry and didn't make the pastry soggy, she said. Ready for where the poison comes in?
Yeah.
Okay. Patterson told the court she tasted the mixture and it was a little bland. That's when she added dried mushrooms that she'd previously stored in a plastic container in the pantry. Asked by Mandy what she believed to be in the plastic container in the pantry, she said, I believed it was just the mushrooms that I bought in Melbourne. And now, what do you think might have been in that tub? Mandy asked. Now I think there was a possibility that they were foraged ones in there as well, she said, her voice breaking. Patterson told the court that Ian and Heather Wilkinson ate all of their meal. Don finished what Gail hadn't eaten. Patterson only ate about a quarter or a third of her beef Wellington because she was talking a lot and eating slowly, she said. After lunch, they cleaned up and sat down to eat an orange cake that Gail had brought. I had a piece of the cake and then another piece of the cake and then another, Patterson said. How many
Whoa.
Yeah, right? I guess.
She didn't eat all of her meal, but she had 3 desserts?
Yeah. I guess Weight Watchers isn't in the equation, right?
My kind of girl.
Right.
I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Patterson then said, how many pieces of cake did you have? Mandy asked. All of it, Patterson replied. She said that amounted to around 2/3 of the original cake.
Dang, girl.
Well, she couldn't eat the beef Wellington.
Meanwhile, everyone around her is just dying and she's just eating cake.
She's like, this is great cake. Well, you know, when in Rome, eat the cake.
Wow.
Yeah. She said, I felt overfull. Well, no shit, Sherlock.
Well, I suppose.
Yeah. She said, so I went to the toilets and brought it back up again.
What?
She went
A little
bulimic.
bench and purge?
Yeah, she went bulimic on the bed. Patterson has previously told the court that she battled bulimia for much of her life and was self-conscious about her weight.
Wow, this story is bananas.
Well, it's orange cake. That's what it is. Patterson said she felt nauseous after the lunch and later that evening took medication for diarrhea. The next day she skipped Sunday Mass due to the symptoms and still had diarrhea later that day. So she didn't skip Mass because she killed 3 people. She skipped Mass because she had diarrhea. I guess we know what what area of psychopathy she falls under.
Wow.
Yeah. That night, she said she removed the pastry and mushrooms from the leftover beef Wellington and put the meat in the microwave for the children to eat for dinner.
She was going to kill the kids.
Yeah. The next day, Monday, she thought she might need fluids, so she went to the hospital where a doctor told her that she might have been exposed to death cap mushrooms. Patterson said she was shocked and confused. I didn't see how death cap mushrooms could be in the meal. Earlier Wednesday, Patterson told the court that she hadn't seen websites that purported to show the location of death cap mushrooms near her house. She said she was aware of death cap mushrooms and had searched them out online to find out if they grew in her area. She said she found that they didn't. Patterson also told her trial on Wednesday that she had foraged for mushrooms at the Corumburra Botanical Gardens in May of 2023 and may have picked some mushrooms near oak trees. The court has previously heard that death cap mushrooms grow near oak trees. Patterson said she would dehydrate any mushrooms she didn't want to use immediately and store them in plastic containers in the pantry. She said that around that time, she also bought dried mushrooms from an Asian grocer in Melbourne. Because they had a pungent smell, she said, she put them in a plastic container in the pantry. Mandy asked, do you have any memories of putting wild mushrooms that you dehydrated in May or June of 2023 into a container which already contained other dried mushrooms? Patterson replied, yes, I did do that. Later in the proceedings, Patterson recalled a conversation she had with her husband, Simon, as his parents were gravely ill in the hospital. She said she mentioned she had dried mushrooms in a dehydrator. He said to me, is that how you poisoned my parents, using that dehydrator? She had told the trial. She said his comment caused her to do a lot of thinking about a lot of things. It got me thinking about all the times that I had used the dehydrator and how I had dried forage mushrooms in it weeks earlier. And I was starting to think, what if they'd gone in the container with the Chinese mushrooms? Maybe that had happened. Patterson said she became really scared, and by the time she returned home from the health center, she was frantic. She felt responsible because she'd made the meal and served it, and people got sick, she said. On August 2nd, Patterson said she dropped her children at school, then took the dehydrator to the trash dump. She said child protection officers were due to visit her house that afternoon, and she was scared about having a conversation about the meal and the dehydrator. I was scared that they would blame me for it, for making everyone sick, she said. I was scared they removed the children, she added. Asked whether she had come to the realization that death cap mushrooms may have been in the meal, Patterson said no. She said she thought there might be evidence of any foraged mushrooms in the dehydrator. Patterson also told the court she was responsible for 3 factory resets of her phone. Her son did the first. She said that she knew that there were images of mushrooms in the dehydrator in her Google Photos. I just panicked and didn't want them to see them, she said. Asked who she was talking about, she said the detectives. Patterson's evidence will continue on Thursday. So
that's a little suspicious.
A little guilty, Jess. Just a tiny bit guilty. But yet she's coming out with all this in court.
And she did eat some of it. So you think if she knew it was in there, she just wouldn't eat any of it. I wouldn't. I'd be scared.
Well, but does a tiny bit kill you? Maybe she had researched that as well.
Could be.
Because it's kind of like, okay, our guest in the beginning of the program, Dan Zimmerman, is talking about the inmate who knows just how to stab himself a little bit in the stomach to get free of jail, right? Mm. So you want to get free of jail to go to a hospital so that you can break out of jail. You just stab yourself in the right place, you're still doing harm to yourself. So that you can get out of jail to go to a hospital so you can break out of the hospital and be free. You still got to do harm to yourself in order to get out.
Yikes.
But you do.
I couldn't do it.
You do just enough harm to get out. You do just enough harm to kill the people around you and not kill yourself.
Yeah. You got to eat just enough of the beef.
That's right. You do just
And
enough.
she made herself throw up too. So
Yes.
I don't know.
So if you throw up enough of the poison, I mean, it's a calculated risk, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe she did that on purpose. She ate all that cake and she's like, then I'm going to go throw up because then I'll definitely get the poison out too.
Yeah.
Oh, devious.
That's why it's called a dumb crime. Because you never know. I mean, it's, there's a good chance you could die, but there's a good chance you could live. You're totally taking the risk.
Yeah. She lived, but then she got busted. So
That's right. That's right. All right. Our next story has to do with an attendant who's facing decades in prison after a bust involving a new drug that's made of human bones.
ew.
Right. There is, if you go down that rabbit hole, you go down that well, there's some disgusting stuff that people put in their bodies to get high.
Yeah.
Trust me, there is. All right. We're going to lighten it up just slightly before we get into, we're almost to our not safe for work category. An ex-con falls victim to the hot chip challenge. Have you ever done the hot chip challenge?
No.
No? You ever heard
Is
of
it
it?
like the hot chip from that show in the 80s? The police officer?
I'm not sure if I know what you're talking about, but the hot chip challenge is the one chip. The one chip comes in, it comes in one container.
No, I don't know that one.
No, it's like the hottest chip on earth.
Mm-mm.
No? Have you ever seen the container? The container looks like this.
Okay. I've
And
never seen the container. Where do you buy this at?
oh, you can get it at different variety stores. Or if you go to a Spencer's, you can find a hot chip challenge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But supposedly, if you can get through one bite of this hot chip, you're amazing. But the idea is to be able to eat the entire chip without drinking anything.
All right. And this is making people die?
It's incredible. No, it doesn't make people die, but it's incredibly hot is the idea. But I'll tell you a little bit about it because an ex-con fell victim to the hot chip challenge. The parolee washed down a spicy chip with a banned beer. Here's the deal. A convicted felon who engaged in the hot chip challenge is behind bars, charged with violating his parole by swigging from a bottle of beer due to the chip being so hot. In other words, no beer, right?
No.
Being he was out on parole. 31-year-old Daryl Dalekis was arrested for allegedly violating parole and his parole terms that bar him from using or possessing alcohol or frequenting, there we go, an establishment where the primary purpose is the sale of alcohol. But he was doing the hot chip challenge. He was just looking for something to drink real quick because this chip is so hot. And this chip has Fear the Reaper on it, by the way, because it is a Reaper. It's a Reaper pepper that they use in the chip to make it so hot.
Yeah.
The parole conditions were part of Dalekis's, I think is his last name, sentencing in Colorado in connection with a felony stalking conviction. Is it Dalekis? Dalekis lives in Florida, where he was busted during a meeting with probation officers who had reviewed a video showing him with a Corona in his hand. Dalekis is a risk to himself and others with any further alcohol use, according to an affidavit sworn by a probation and parole officer. The video, reportedly recorded in late March, showed him doing the hot chip challenge, according to an arrest report. Confronted with the clip, Dalekis admitted to taking a swig of the Corona due to the chip being so hot. Court records do not indicate how the probation officers learned of the video, though the social media accounts and phones of those being supervised are often reviewed. While there have been several versions of the challenge, each has involved the consumption of a tortilla chip covered with chili spices that approach the upper reaches of the Scoville scale. In addition to his alleged beer consumption, Dalekis was cited earlier this month for violating a parole requirement to carry a tracking device. Dalkis's rap sheet includes convictions for dealing in stolen property, cocaine sales, grand theft, credit card theft, heroin possession, cocaine possession, theft, burglary, and violating a domestic violence protection order. So he probably shouldn't be having beer on top of it.
Just a handful of little things.
Yeah. Dalkis, who has spent a combined total of 7 years in state prison, has a parole termination date in late 2026. So if he would have just laid off the beer, he was pretty darn close to being done with parole.
You should have had a glass of milk ready. Everyone knows that's how you put out the fire in your mouth.
That's right. But instead, he reached for the Corona.
What a dummy.
Yep. All right. Let me introduce you, Jess, to the boogie burglar, who dances like nobody's watching before he broke into a Victorian school.
Oh, I like him already.
Yeah. We'll actually put up the video of the boogie burglar in the description of this program so you can watch him do his thing. A toe-tapping thief showed off his dance moves on camera before burglarizing a school of thousands of dollars worth of gear, according to police. I'm not kidding. He really was dancing. It's believed a man driving a silver Holden Commodore drove into a car park of a school in Sunbury, Victoria at about 1:10 a.m. on April 23rd. After getting out of the car, the man performed a jaunty dance that CCTV cameras faithfully recorded. The man then broke into the school and stole 3 laptops and a projector. Police estimated the value of the gear at more than $5,000. The man is described as Caucasian in appearance, so the dance couldn't have been that good. And he was aged in his 30s with medium build and dark brown hair. He was wearing a red and black hooded jumper, black running shoes, red headband, and blue gloves. Police, of course, released the CCTV of the incident because they wanted you to see the dance. Anybody with information is urged to contact Crime Stoppers at 800-333. It just says 000, or there's an online thing you can click if you recognize him. Again, we'll put up the article so you can watch the dance itself.
Just a middle-aged white guy living his flash dance dreams.
That's right. I don't know if he put water over himself or not at the end. I haven't watched the dance, to be quite honest with you. And one more, I believe, here, Jess, before we go to our not safe for work category. And this one actually made national news, and I was quite surprised by it. You know, I saw a news article earlier in the week that had asked the question, have we gone too far with tipping? Because it seems like everywhere we go these days.
Yeah.
There's tip fatigue is what they're calling it.
Yeah, you tip everyone.
Yeah, and everyone's asking for a tip now. An armed DoorDash dope was busted over tip demand. The driver claimed he was cheated of a cash gratuity. It turns out that this guy was angered that he had not received a cash tip on the night before on a $100 order. The DoorDash driver returned to a Washington home with a loaded gun on his hip to seek the gratuity. Yeah. Investigators allege that 59-year-old Robert Delahant showed up last Thursday morning at the Vancouver residence of 19-year-old Kiana Kornkoff, to demand the tip. Delahant was loud and mouthy, Kornkoff told police. After Kornkoff's father told Delahant to leave the family's property, the men got into an altercation during which Delahant allegedly reached for a holstered Ruger firearm. 55-year-old Anthony Valino told cops that he grabbed Delahant's gun and pushed the driver down onto the driveway. So in other words, Grandpa wasn't having it. He just took the gun away from the guy and put him down on the driveway.
Good for him.
Yeah. Valino stated that when he smelled liquor on Robert's breath, he thought anything could happen, according to a probable cause affidavit sworn by Vancouver Police Department officers. Valino, cops reported, said he feared for his safety when Delahunt reached for the gun. After driving away from the residence in his Kia Soul, Delahunt called police dispatch and advised the house cheated him out of a tip, so he returned and was pushed. Cops say Delahunt, who smelled of booze, admitted to drinking at home before returning to the client's residence. I shouldn't have come back, Delahunt reportedly told police. He also claimed that he had only lifted his shirt to show he was armed before being confronted by Valino. A home security camera recorded the men wrestling over the firearm, according to Officer Christian Strom. The footage also showed Valino holding the gun after Delahunt had been disarmed and shoved to the ground. Delahunt was charged with assault, harassment, and driving under the influence. His blood alcohol level was measured at more than twice the legal limit. Court records indicate that Delahunt has a prior DUI conviction. Delahunt's DoorDash delivery days, by the way, have ended, according to the company. They have since fired him.
Fair.
Very fair.
Guy should have tipped him, though. But you gotta tip your DoorDash people. They don't make very much.
From what I was told, he was tipped. That he was tipped $20 on the $100 on the $100 bill.
$300 though, or $3 on the $100 bill?
No, he was tipped $20 on the $100 bill.
Oh, okay.
He was given a 20% tip. He wanted cash on top of it.
Oh,
because they take.
I misunderstood that part then.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No excuse then.
See, he wanted cash. He wanted cash on top of it.
What a psycho.
That's why he went back. See, because they take off the card charge, they take a certain amount off of it. So he didn't get the full $20.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So he wanted cash.
I see.
So if
they don't give you cash, then DoorDash gets some of it.
Well, it's impossible to get cash off a DoorDash, but he wanted more cash on top of it. So in other words, he wanted more of a tip on a $100 order.
Oh.
Yeah. He felt like he should have got more. So.
I guess.
Because I'll tell you what, I'll post this one as well because it's a confusing video. He says stuff like, "Well, look at this home. This is such a nice home. You should have given me more of a tip."
Oh, that's not fair.
No,
20% is totally a fair tip.
He's pretty deranged. Yeah.
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 Obviously.
And he's going after. Keep in mind, this is a 19-year-old girl he was going after.
Oh gosh!
It was a 19-year-old girl who had placed the order. It was the father who came out, or the grandfather, I think it was, because it was the 55-year-old who came out to confront him when he was going to take a gun after a 19-year-old.
Oh, that makes me afraid of DoorDash food.
Well,
not easy people deliver in.
Keep in mind, here are the statistics, though, because again, I was intrigued by this story. The statistics are actually that DoorDash drivers are attacked more than DoorDash drivers attack customers. And
I believe that.
The numbers are astounding when it comes to DoorDash drivers who are attacked by customers. And especially when you break it down by, I'm trying to remember what the number is. Again, I don't have the information in front of me, but they broke it down by cost of order. So when the order is something like by less than $20 or something like that, or more than $20, when it gets below a certain threshold, the percentage of drivers who get attacked is astounding.
Don't tell me this, Tim. My son does DoorDash.
I don't mean to scare you, Jess, but it goes from like 1 in 10 to 1 in 3 get attacked. It's really scary.
I know that it's hard for him to stay in our area because people will order from up in the city or closer to the city, a suburb closer to the city, and then he'll have to take it from the suburbs down here up to that suburb, and then he's shown as like being in that area, and then someone will order from the city. So he'll find himself like up in Minneapolis when he really won't care to be. He'd rather just stay down in our area that's a little less crime riddled.
Yeah.
And just, not worry about it so much, but he always gets sucked up into the city.
Yeah. So, there's a threshold, a price threshold. And I believe I saw it on NBC News. So if you just go to NBCnews.com, I think they still have the story up because this is a relatively fresh story.
Yikes.
So yeah, I mean you can research that for yourself, but they give the actual, because I know that they were trying to balance that for people's sake, because I think a lot of people think, well, there's got to be a whole rash of DoorDash employees that are attacking customers, and it's not. It's the opposite.
Right.
The opposite.
Yeah, most of them are probably more like my son, who's just trying to supplement his internship income.
Right, and it's actually the opposite. There are more customer attacks on DoorDash drivers than there are DoorDash drivers attacking customers. So, and it's
scary world.
And it's by far the opposite is true.
Yeah.
So it's a weird, it's a bizarre world we live in. That's all I got to say. All right. So with that, it's not safe for work time, Jess.
All right.
And with that, it's time to put the kids in the closet. It's time to put the boss in his office. It's time to put earmuffs on everybody, except for us adults who can handle it or stomach it. And we'll do it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's time to get our yuck on. Speaking of yuck, here's something that rhymes with yuck. Truck nuts.
Kind of.
Do you know anybody who has truck nuts on their truck?
I don't know what truck nuts are.
You don't know what truck nuts are?
No. Are they like things you hang from your mirror?
No. They literally they go on the back of a truck on the trailer hitch. And they are what they say they are. They're a pair of balls, chrome balls that hang off the trailer hitch. Like they look like a pair of male genitalia that hang off the trailer hitch.
Why?
It's a redneck thing, Jess. I figured your area of the country, you'd see them all the time.
No,
No?
I've never in my life encountered truck nuts in Iowa or Minnesota.
Now that I've said it, you will see it everywhere you go. You'll see a pair of balls hanging off of a trailer hitch on a truck.
Okay.
Yeah, truck nuts.
I'll be watching.
It turns out Idaho has had enough of truck nuts.
Well, I don't blame them. Nobody wants to see saggy balls.
Right. Nobody wants to see sagging balls off a truck. They've passed what they call is emergency truck nuts legislation. You didn't think.
Wonderful.
You didn't think that there'd be such a thing, right?
No.
But it's out there. The question is, what is emergency for legislative purposes? Well, the brief answer is whatever the legislature says it is. In March, the Idaho legislature declared that an emergency existed in the state, requiring it to immediately criminalize the public exposure of, among other things, any human breast, except for breastfeeding purposes. Many of you are probably thinking, wasn't that already illegal in Idaho? And the somewhat surprising answer is no, but it is now. And I guess not a moment too soon, right? House Bill 270, which the governor has since signed into law, amended and expanded the state's indecent exposure statute. And I know you're saying, why are we talking about Idaho? But bear with me here. Previously, it criminalized only the exposure of what we will refer to as one's business in any public place, that's in quotes, or in any place where there is present another person or persons who are offended thereby, Idaho Code 18-4116. But the bill expands this to punish one who similarly displays toys or products intended to resemble male or female business or exposes developed female breasts, real or artificial. The concern about toys or products intended to resemble human business, I love how they use business here, is what seems to have gotten the bill dubbed the Truck Nuts Bill. following mockery to that effect by Melissa Wintrow, Idaho's Senate Minority Leader. Here's the quote from her. They're gross, they're offensive, and kids on the road see them. So why wouldn't the police get a call and say, that offends me? Pull it off the truck, Wintrow said, because now this bill will allow it. And I talked to police, and they said, indeed, it would.
So now you're entitled to just go rip the nuts right off that truck.
Yes, Jess. You can now rip the nuts off that damn there truck in Idaho.
Only in Idaho, though.
If you're listening in Idaho, you can now rip the nuts off of anybody's truck.
I feel like we should road trip to Idaho looking for nuts on trucks and rip them off. Well, the Idaho Supreme Court will be the ultimate judge of that, at least the author of this article certainly hopes it will. But aside from a moment, what this bill covers or requires it to be covered, get it? In what universe, you may be asking, does any of this constitute an emergency where there's signs that Idaho is about to collapse into ruin and savagery due to wanton displays of the human breast or truck nuts? That's what they ask. Who knows? But there is an emergency declaration relating to new legislation taking effect. So yes, there is an emergency in Idaho having to do with truck nuts. So I'd like to assess our definition of emergency.
Yeah. I don't know if truck nuts are running amok in Idaho, but there's a bill that's been passed that criminalizes truck nuts.
Well, I did Google them while you were reading the story, and they're pretty funny.
You saw them, right?
Yeah, there's like pictures of guys sitting on the backs of trucks with the truck nuts hanging down between their legs, which is classic. I can't say I understand the need for them, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's
weird.
It's not a need; it's more of a want. You know?
Yeah, I guess
you got to have something to cover up the hitch. You know? I mean,
do you though?
Well, yeah. I mean, you don't want to expose the hitch; it rusts. So
just hang some nuts over it.
Yeah, you want to expose the ball hitch. You know, you don't want to. You know, you don't want your balls exposed, so you put nuts over it. See what?
Interesting.
See how it goes. See how that works, Jess? See?
Yeah.
Yep. See, that's why we're discussing this in Not Safe for Work. All right, we go from the not so reasonable truck nuts bill to the completely unreasonable Los Gatos party mom. By the way, how far have you gone to help your kids throw a party?
I mean, I used to plan awesome birthday parties when they were little, but
how awesome?
I wouldn't say they were pretty awesome. They had lots of games and, you know, we didn't have a pool, but we had all the blow up pools with like a series of different slides that went into them. So when you're like 4, that's awesome.
But were there keg stands and super bongs?
No,
that awesome?
I'm not that kind of mom.
And orgies? Were there those type of super awesomes?
Orgies?
Yeah. You weren't the Los Gatos mom.
I'm definitely not the Los Gatos mom.
Well, see.
Boring.
You got nothing on Los Gatos mom. The Los Gatos party mom has made more calls from jail and delayed her own trial. Turns out she's been a bad mom. Even more bad than initially bad.
Wow.
Terrible
Can she
mom.
get worse?
She can get worse. Shannon O'Connor, also known as the Los Gatos party mom. By the way, had you heard of the Los Gatos party mom before now?
I had not.
Jess, she not going to be the mother of the year anytime soon.
No. Did she have like a TikTok following, or is she like Instagram famous, or what?
A little of both.
Okay.
I'll tell you a little bit about her shenanigans here. Shannon O'Connor, also known as the Los Gatos party mom, was slated to stand trial in May, nearly 4 years after her arrest. The mother of two is accused of organizing and hosting alcohol-fueled parties for underage teenagers and encouraging minors to have sex with each other while the mom watched.
What?
Now, can you imagine throwing those kind of parties for the kids there at the old homestead?
Nope.
No, I wouldn't think so.
They wouldn't want me to either.
No. According to prosecutors, O'Connor organized the disturbing secret sex parties between 2020 and 2021 for Los Gatos high school students. Parents of the alleged victims said O'Connor wanted teens to think of her as the fun mom. That's air quotes, the fun mom.
Wow.
How fun is fun?
I don't want to be the fun mom.
No, you don't want to be that fun. That's
my son said I'm the funny mom.
The funny mom.
The funny mom. I'm not the fun mom.
Just the funny.
I wanted to be the hot mom, but then I found out you really don't want to be the hot mom either.
Yeah, you don't want to be Stifler's mom. That's no. Spent a lot of time on your back if you're Stifler's mom. She wanted to be the fun mom so she could manipulate and control them. This gets into some deep, sick psychological stuff.
Yeah.
Last month, her jury trial was delayed once again because defense attorneys argued that they need more time to prepare for such a large case. A grand jury indicted the party mom on 63 felony and misdemeanor charges. The grand jury's transcript is 2,223 pages, and evidence compiled by prosecutors for the case contains more than 23,000 pages of discovery files. Defense attorney Stephen Prokosky convinced a Santa Clara County judge in April to delay the trial until July. Prokosky wrote in court documents because of a substantial number of charges filed against Ms. O'Connor, and because of the novel and complex nature of the case, a continuance of at least 60 days is now requested. O'Connor has been locked up in jail for 44 months. During that time, she made a series of jail calls, that will likely be used against her in front of a jury. After she was arrested in late 2021, get this, Jess, O'Connor called her then 15-year-old son and repeatedly ordered him to not cooperate with investigators, according to court documents. Her son identified. Don't cooperate. So here's the stuff that you did and I did, but don't cooperate. So she's incriminating herself over the phone, and they're recording all this from jail. How stupid could you be?
Pretty stupid, apparently.
Yeah. Her son, identified as a victim in the case as John Doe 3, promised to follow his mother's instructions, according to documents describing the call. So he's already in big time trouble. Recently filed court documents state that O'Connor made more phone calls from jail in March 2023 and February 2025 that were recorded and seized by prosecutors for their case. Female victims said O'Connor befriended them through her sons. During a 2023 hearing, Jane Doe 8 appeared in court and said, "This woman tore my life apart. I've suffered and had to deal with the reputation of being the girl that got raped. I will live my high school years with this cloud over me."
Oh, sad.
Yeah. Jane Doe 8 said she continues to show signs of no remorse. "I will never have the life I once had, and neither should she." O'Connor made more jail calls to her husband, Robert Amaral, in 2021, urging him to hide finances by transferring ownership of their $4 million Los Gatos mansion, prosecutors wrote. According to reports, the wealthy Silicon Valley tech company executive was completely unaware of his wife's boozy parties because he traveled out of town frequently for work. Investigators also confirmed that Amaral was kept in the dark. Amaral, by the way, later filed for divorce.
Good for him.
He was like, "I'm out of here, yeah. Whore."
Oh, man.
I'm just imagining he threw that last part in there. The party mom is now 51 years old. I think she's aged out of that party category just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say.
Her defense attorney did not respond to KRON4's request for comment on Monday, probably because she's already said more than enough for everybody.
Right.
Prosecutors are trying to avoid more delays that will push the trial past summer. Deputy District Attorney Rebecca Wise provided the court with a timeline showing how the case has unfolded. It hasn't unfolded well. We'll just put it that way. It's the thing has been delayed multiple times since 2021, almost 10 times to be exact. There's a picture of her. You want to see a picture of the Los Gatos mom?
Yes.
This is a picture.
Let's see this woman in the thrust of a midlife crisis.
Picture of her from jail.
Oh, she doesn't look so fun.
No. She looks kind of miserable, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As she should.
Ms. O'Connor, right there. All right. Speaking of pervs, we move on. We go to Scotland. We rarely have a Scottish perv.
Yeah, I can't think of the last Scottish perv we've had.
They're a rare breed at that. A pervert Paisley paramedic who exposed himself to a female colleague avoids jail this week. A Paisley paramedic who exposed himself to a female colleague at an ambulance base has avoided jail. 32-year-old Gavin Boa pressured a colleague to expose her breast to him after being called out to a sick patient and sent her images of his genitals.
Whoa.
You're busy saving lives. When do you have time to do this? Boa also spent 7 months bombarding 2 junior female colleagues with graphic porn and explicit messages while working. Again, when do you have time? I mean, you're on an ambulance. And he asked one woman to have sex with him, all while doing all this. Boa was found guilty of 5 sex offenses in May following a trial at a Paisley Sheriff Court. He last week avoided prison as he was ordered to do 150 hours of unpaid work. Boa was also banned from contacting 2 victims for a year and was added to the sex offenders registry for 2 years. His professional paramedic registration has been suspended, and he now faces a hearing of the Healthcare Professionals Tribunal to decide whether to remove it. So he still gets to hold on to his license. They have to try that separately.
Hopefully he loses that in the next trial.
Yeah. An HCPT spokesman said it is standard practice for a regulator to wait until the end of criminal proceedings before finalizing its investigations. The trial heard from one of Boa's victims who said she froze when the paramedic exposed himself to her while they were on a break from jobs at the Paisley ambulance base. The woman described how she had been on shift with him on December 3rd of 2023, and his behavior was out of control from the start. She said he had asked her for sex twice during their 12-hour shift and demanded she show him her breasts before he would move the ambulance on from being called out to a sick patient.
What?
So he's like, we're not going to pick him up until you whip him out.
This guy's going to die. It's going to be all on you unless you show me your boobies.
That's right. Isn't that weird?
What a weird psycho.
The woman said he wouldn't move the ambulance until I did. I felt completely ashamed. You shouldn't feel ashamed.
She did?
I guess.
I'd have been like, I'll show you a pair. Maybe a pair of black eyes and they'll be yours.
Maybe a pair of black balls and kick them in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When they returned to the depot on Craw Road, he exposed himself and performed a sex act.
What on earth?
This guy is just weird. During the trial, Boa, who was in a senior position and had responsibility for signing off junior staff training, oh God, he was a trainer on top of it, said sexualized behavior was part of the culture at the ambulance service. No, it's not. Oh.
Not to that level, I'm sure. No. That can't be normal.
Following his conviction, Scottish ambulance service chiefs put up posters in bases across the country warning staff against sexual harassment. The move was blasted by politicians who said more had to be done to protect workers, particularly women who were being subjected to harassment. A Scottish ambulance service spokesperson said any form of sexual misconduct is completely unacceptable and will not be tolerated in the Scottish ambulance service. By the way, this is what the prevert looks like right there. Yeah.
He looks very professional.
He kind of does, doesn't he? Well, I suppose he had to clean up for court. But
on the bottom, he has no pants on.
Yes. He went to court with no pants on.
Yeah. Top, but no bottoms.
Yes, the top, but no bottoms. Yes. We got another pervert. This time he's in a pool. And doing things.
Pervert in a pool.
Pervert in a pool. And I think he did something to this floaty. I'm not sure.
Oh, no. The poor floaty.
I know.
Oh, my goodness. He looks deranged.
He does look deranged, doesn't he?
Oh, my gosh.
If that guy were in my pool, I would probably shoot first and ask questions later. It's probably how I would.
Especially if he was molesting my duck floaty.
Yes, yeah. It says here, the 41-year-old man pleasured self with purloined plastic.
Ouch.
Yeah. A man who admitted sexually gratifying himself with pool floats has pleaded guilty to a months-long burglary spree that netted him dozens of inflatable partners.
No way. He was stealing the inflatables? Oh, come on. Just buy yourself a blow-up doll already and call it a day.
They're so cheap at Walmart. I mean, you just a couple of bucks.
You can get them on Temu.
Right, Temu. Right, Temu. You could go nuts on Temu for a couple of.
I mean, like $5
for
you got yourself a
for $20. You get a
companion.
$20, you could have a shed full. All right.
Oh gosh.
And a deal with, of course, Florida prosecutors. That's right. We're going to Florida. 41-year-old Christopher Monin.
You can't make it up.
You can't make it up. Cop to theft and burglary charges on the eve of his scheduled June 2nd criminal trial in Brevard County. While such felony convictions carry stiff maximum prison terms, Monin's plea deal resulted in a downward departure, in part because he requires specialized treatment for a mental disorder that is unrelated to substance abuse or addiction. That's right, he's addicted to the pool floaties. Oh, look at it all plump and juicy, Jess. Just floating.
That yellow plastic duck. I just want to sit on it.
Floating on the water, tempting me.
Teasing me with its flappy wings.
Quack, quack at me, will ya? Quack, quack. Quack, quack. According to a court filing, it noted that the defendant was amenable to treatment. I bet he was. Get that demon out of me! A judge sentenced Monin to 2 years of community control, an intensive form of probation that compares to house arrest. He will then be placed on standard probation for 8 additional years. Monin, who was also fined, guess how much?
No,
we have to play this.
Not much.
We have to play this game. How much for molesting pool floaties? How much?
It's got to be low. I'm going to go with, like $1,500.
Lower.
Really? Mm-hmm. $500.
Higher.
Okay. $700.
$840.
Oh.
That's some kid's treasured toy.
Yeah, or it's my favorite place to lay and have a cocktail. Like, get your weenie off of my blow-up mattress.
You said something important there. You can't have a cocktail without a little cock. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Yeah.
It's really putting the cock in my cocktail.
He really is. He was fined $840, and he's going to spend 8 months in the county jail before being released on bond. Well, he did release himself in a pool floaty.
I would want to know if that guy was my neighbor.
Oh, he'll introduce himself, especially if you have a pool. Monin's case was dragged on, which has dragged on for years, began following his 1:30 a.m. suspicious person arrest by a Palm Bay Police Department officer. The cop spotted Monin riding a bicycle and carrying a white garbage bag full of what he identified as deflated pool floats. Was that
AKA his girlfriend?
That's right, AKA my harem. Do you think that was before or after the scene of the crime?
Had to have been after.
You think after? Since Palm Bay had been plagued with burglaries in which the suspect cuts the screen or otherwise enters a victim's back pool area and steals only pool floats, Monin was identified as a prime suspect. I bet he was. Monin lived in Palm Bay, where police had received more than a dozen separate reports about pool float burglaries. During police questioning, Monin reportedly admitted burglarizing several residents and swiping many floats. Monin directed investigators to a vacant house across the street from his Palm Bay residence where he stored the purloined floats.
Wow, he kept them in a vacant house?
He gave up his hiding spot.
Creepier.
It is, yeah, isn't it? He's like, right there, that's my hiding spot.
Just, ugh.
Yeah. As detailed in a police report, cops found about 75 pool floats in the house.
75?
He's a pool float hoarder.
Were they all sticky?
It was one big pool float mountain held together with DNA.
Or were some of them unmolested?
Virgin pool floats.
Yeah.
That's a rarity. It was a sunbeam. As detailed in a police report, cops found about 75 pool floats in the house. A search warrant inventory lists some of the seized items: a lounge chair with cup holders, a duck float, a lobster float, a French fries float, a pizza float, a turtle float, a whale float, a banana float, an elephant float, a watermelon float, and a float shaped like a piece of bacon. By the way, beware, TNT broadcasters. There was also a stolen Shaquille O'Neal branded Shaq inflatable lounger. So he wants to stick it to Shaquille O'Neal.
Oh my god. I wonder which one was his favorite.
Probably the Shaq one. He likes them big.
You think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Either that or the bacon one. Or maybe both at the same time.
Ooh, a little bit of pork for your pork. Just saying. Yeah. Monin, whose home did not have a pool, he was jealous, reportedly told police that he sexually gratifies himself with the floats and does this instead of raping women.
Well, give that guy a medal.
Yeah, right. Give him a medal. I love how you said that. He's an upstanding part of his community. Prior to the May 29th pool float plea, Monin had been convicted of burglary, theft, loitering, and prowling and violating probation. Each of his prior burglary convictions, which date back to 2007 and 2008, involved the theft of pool floats. When he was collared in 2017 for loitering and prowling, he was found with an inflatable raft in his bike basket.
Oh my goodness. It's just too many mental images going through my mind right now.
Guess what? It keeps me from raping.
Yeah. Well, I really want to rape women, but
I'm taking the pool floats instead.
Taking the pool floats instead.
Yeah. Keeps me from raping.
Well, carry on then, sir.
Just imagine this guy right here.
Yeah, freak.
Just give me your pool float. It keeps me from raping.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'd rather he rape my pool float than me or my children. So.
Tell you what, I'll take you over to Walmart and you can pick out whatever you want.
But I feel like the only pool float I have is a noodle. I'm not sure how much he can enjoy that.
Well, there's a hole at the end of the noodle.
There is a hole at the end of the noodle.
See?
Maybe it's perfect.
It is. The noodle is a perfect toy for him. Because once he's done with one end, he's got another. You get just
double your pleasure.
It's endless fun. It's like a rapist fleshlight, is what it is. It's endless fun for the entire rapist family.
A pool tool rapist dream.
A pool tool rapist dream. Oh, good God. Oh boy, was that my final? I thought that was not my final.
Is that where you're leaving us?
I thought I had another story. I could have swore I had another story. I thought I had one horrifying last story for us here. I could have swore, Jess, I did have one horrifically horrific story. Geez. But
it's gone.
But it's maybe gone. I think that's it.
It's like the universe came down and said, nope, you've traumatized her enough, Tim.
I think I've
the hand of God has touched your laptop.
Or somebody, yeah. I do have some palate cleansers, so I have.
I'll take a palate cleanser or two. I feel like I've earned it.
I bet you would. Yeah, I think we've all earned it. Our palate cleansers for today. There's actually it was a double palate cleanser for today. Actually, I have a note before we go to the palate cleanser. Do you know that, here's your note for today, because it is not safe for work territory. Do you know that, Pornhub left France because of the age verification thing? Do you know that when Pornhub left France, there's a VPN company that shot up 1,000% in 30 minutes after Pornhub turned off the tap?
Really? What?
Yes. So essentially, the French can't go without their porn. Is what happened. They went, oh, sacre de bleu, and then they turned on the VPN and needed their porn.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, they had to get behind that firewall so they could get back on the porn.
Those French perverts.
Yeah. So just an interesting little tidbit for you there. And then, the other interesting thing that we didn't have time for today, British Airways banned their crew members from taking selfies and making TikToks for security's sake.
Oh,
it didn't really fit.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it really didn't fit in any crime, but I thought that was interesting. So we'll just throw that tidbit out. So I have a new best friend. So this is the first part of the palate cleanser for today.
Okay.
I have a new best friend. His name is Augustine. I call him Augie. Augie Doggy. I'm Daddy Doggy.
Okay.
Okay. We're best of friends, besties. And I just want to say congratulations because he just graduated.
Hey.
Yeah. Yay, Augie. Yay, Augie.
Yay, Augie.
Congratulations on the graduation. He also comes with some bennies. He's got his own PJ, his own private jet. So we're going to take off. I'll pick you up on the PJ.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm ready. I've got a bag packed already.
Yeah, we'll go hang out. He's also, he's got some slam and other side bennies as well. Just ignore the slam and side bennies. It's kind of more of a side benny for me. His mom is Linda Evangelista. His stepmom is Salma Hayek. It's just a little, yeah. Don't ignore that part.
What a life.
What a life. Yeah.
Double hot moms. That's not fair.
Yeah, I know, but it's okay. It turns out I'm talking about one New Jersey high school senior who brought major star power to his graduation ceremony. His name is Augustine. And yes, his mother is Linda Evangelista. He brought on one arm, there's his mom, Linda Evangelista. Nice. On his other mom is his stepmom, Salma Hayek. They were both at his graduation Sunday from Dwight Englewood High School. Can you imagine that?
No, I cannot.
If you're wondering how we became friends, me and Augie, I'm teaching him how to do podcasts. Yeah. So from here
Good, he's learning from the best.
Well, I'm trying. They were both there for his graduation. Linda Evangelista shared photos from the happy day on Instagram on Monday, showing the whole family at the Englewood School event. She says she's one proud mama. She says, blessed, blessed, blessed. I said that too. I said, you're blessed, 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 Augie. You're a blessed kid. Let me share in your blessings. That's what I told Augie. Evangelista shared a photo of her 18-year-old son, Augustine, with his diploma, which is printed with his full name, Augustine James Evangelista Pinot. Now, here's the interesting thing, Jess. This is where, again, I'm going to fold you into our circle here, Jess. You and me, we're going to hang out with Augie and his famous moms and her, more importantly, listen up here, her famous dad. Or his famous dad, not her, his famous dad. Augustine's father is French billionaire Francois-Henri Pinault, who's been married to Selma Hayek now, or Hayek Pinault, since 2009. Now, you may be saying, Francois-Henri Pinault, what does he do for a living?
Yeah, how did he get to be a millionaire and get all these hot ladies?
Billionaire.
Okay, billionaire.
Billionaire. Turns out Augustine was born in 2006 after the end of Evangelista's relationship with Pinot. Pinot is the founder of the luxury group Kering, 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 which owns the fashion brands of, is it a little company called Balenciaga? Is that what it is? Balenciaga. I
don't know fancy names of brands.
Is that the fashion bag? Balenciaga? Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I'm not cool.
Bottega Veneta Gucci? Is that what it is? Gucci? And
Gucci, I know.
Yeah, and Yves Saint Laurent? Yeah. Yves Saint Laurent? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. That I know, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't afford any of it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, those big fashion brands. So, yeah, that's... Augustine's going to inherit all that, but I'm going to teach him how to do podcasts. So,
okay. Yeah. Let's just be really good friends with him and teach him all of, the hacks of life and how to have fun and stuff.
Yeah. So he's our new best friend. We're going to teach him how to do podcasts. Pinot also has a daughter with Hayek, Valentina Paloma Pinot, who's 17. So she'll be graduating soon. So we need to teach her about the facts of life and teach her how to do podcasts as well. And a son and a daughter, Francois Pinot, who's 27, and Mathilde Pinot, who's 24, with ex-wife and interior designer Dorothy Lepere. So
that sounds so fancy.
Plenty of kids who need to learn about podcasts.
Yes.
So we have new best friends.
My dad's a pig farmer.
Where did that come from? My dad's a pig farmer.
Why couldn't my dad be a billionaire?
I don't know. Why couldn't mine be a...
Kidding. I love my dad. You're a great dad. But if I ever found out I was adopted and my real dad was a billionaire, I would still love my pig farmer dad. I would just also love my billionaire dad.
Yeah, I would too.
Just saying, I have plenty of love to go around for a billionaire dad.
By the way, Augie, that's his nickname. It is his nickname. Augie got congratulations from Evangelista's fellow late 80s and early 90s supermodel friends, Christy Turlington, fashion designer Anna Sui, and Nancy Sinatra, and many more.
Yeah, and it's just another day for him. That's just normal life.
Yeah. By the way, Augie, you can take the PJ over here to Minnesota. Your podcast lesson starts on Thursday, so don't be late.
We're ready for you.
That's right. Meanwhile, your other story, your other palate cleanser, which I know, Augie, you're going to have to learn palate cleansers here, buddy. This is your next lesson. Has to do with a hungry wild elephant that raided a grocery store for snacks in Thailand. Because we all get hungry. We all get very hungry.
Yes, hungry like an elephant.
Mm-hmm. A hungry wild elephant has caused havoc in a grocery store in Thailand after strolling in from the Khao Yai National Park and helping himself to food on the shelves. A hungry wild elephant has caused havoc in a grocery store in Thailand on Monday when he strolled in from a nearby national park and helped himself to food on the shelves. Video of the incident showed the huge male elephant known as Plai Bang Lek briefly stopping in front of the shop located next to a main road near the Khao Yai National Park in northeastern Thailand before ducking his whole body inside. The elephant stopped in front of the shop's counter, calmly snatching and chomping snacks, and did not flinch as the national park workers tried to shoo him away. The elephant later backed out of the shop, still holding a bag of snacks with his trunk. He left little damage behind except mud tracks on the floor and the ceiling of the shop. In a video posted on social media, Kamploy Yakao, the shop owner, appeared amused as she described the moment the elephant rifled through her shop. She said he ate about 9 bags of sweet rice crackers, a sandwich, and some dry bananas that she had bought that morning. Kamploy said the elephant left without hurting anyone after getting his snacks. So he's just hungry.
Just hungry. Just need some sweet rice crackers. I don't blame him.
See, there he is right there. He's just needed a snack.
Oh, he's just a little guy.
Just a little guy. Just needed his snacks. So there you go. That's your palate cleanser for today.
Oh, that was a good one. That was my favorite story of the whole day.
There you go. So that'll do it for today. Jess, what's new in your world?
Really just the same old, Tim. So just writing the books. And if you want to find one that you want to buy, you can find them on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever you like to buy books.
There you go. There you go. Tomorrow, the big program, Supernatural News. And then coming up, Jess, you know what's coming? Jess.
What?
Jess. Coming up Thursday, guess what?
What? This is so exciting.
We got a hunka burning program.
Woo!
On Thursday.
That's our teaser.
That's your teaser.
Hunka burning program.
Yeah. Should I even say much more than that, or should I just leave you with that and let you figure it out?
You can tease us with that, and then tease them a little more. Tell them tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll tell you tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's your hint for today.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, that's it. All right, so that'll do it for today. For Jessica Freeberg, I'm Tim Dennis. Folks, check out the app. Check out the YouTube channel. If you're not seeing this on video, check out the YouTube channel, The Original Darkness Radio, or simply go to darknessradioshow.com. Click on the episode you want to see on video, and it should be there. If not, then email me and get under my skin. No, I don't mean that. Or email me and let me know, and I'll let you know where that episode is. Other than that, we'll see you tomorrow for Supernatural News. For Jessica Freeberg, I'm Tim Dennis. Thank you so much for tuning in to the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday.